Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Smart Connected Group and podcast. I've got a wonderful guest for you tonight, Pete Lonton. Welcome, Pete.
Jane, thank you. Thank you for having me on. It's an absolute honor to be here. So thank you very much.
So Pete's a podcaster. Like me, he's got an amazing podcast called Fire in the Belly, and he actually interviewed me for that a few weeks ago. And he's also an author, an investor, and a coach and a mentor. And his first solo book is coming out shortly, isn't it, Pete?
Absolutely, end of February. So it's to match in with I'm doing a TEDx talk as well. So as if we couldn't be any busier, we thought we'd do it all in the space of a couple of weeks. So yeah, fantastic. Why not, right?
Yeah. So tell us about your book before we get into talking about your history and about Fire in the Belly. What's it all about, Pete?
Sure. The book itself is called basically Be Heard to Be Rich, and listening to your inner genius. And it's almost a prequel for my findings so far, not so much in terms of the guests that have been on Fire in the Belly, but more the technique. And as you know, Jane, it's a fairly heavy, in-depth type of interview. People sort of say it's like I've just gone through a very positive counseling session, so it is really quite deep. And we started to see a lot of language coming back and people saying, I don't think I've ever told anyone that, or it really got me thinking. So, because we actually have quite a high spoil rate on our show, as we call it, which is about 30% of the episodes won't go live. And that's simply because it's stuff that people maybe haven't thought about. It's maybe some things in their life that they want to go away and look at before they air it to the public. And that's fine. That's part of the Fire in the Belly journey as far as I'm concerned. So the book itself is in terms of understanding when someone's got fire in the belly, you see the passion, they're doing things and really sort of pushing themselves at all the time. So really this is the prequel for it, is basically when you find that, and also how you go about finding it. So it's about listening to yourself, it's about listening to others, because typically as a nation, as a global nation, we're not actually great listeners, and I was finding a lot of people I was asking and saying, when's the last time someone sat down with you for an hour, maybe 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours, and without judgment, without interruption, just let you talk. And a lot of people say, I don't think I've ever had that chance. Really? That's quite strange, right? It's like, because normally in conversations, right, where sort of, it's backwards and forwards, and there's maybe a bit of judgment, or there's people are familiar with you, whatever it is. So to give someone that space in a positive manner, I would hasten to add. So, but just to reflect back and take a bird's eye view of your own life, and it's actually, when you do that, it's quite a cathartic process. So this is really what the book is about: is listening to yourself. And it's scary to think, but actually, I think probably only about 20% of the population listen to themselves. They've actually unleashed their inner genius and their capability. And it makes me sad in some ways. So that's really why I wanted to say this technique and what we do here is, really can, sort of unleash some amazing things. So it's brilliant. I'm delighted to be doing it.
Yeah, well, I can definitely endorse the podcast. And our interview was a very long one as well. It was 2 hours, wasn't it, Pete, by the time we finished? So it was very, very in-depth and very personal, and actually the most personal interview that I've ever done. So it was a fascinating process. It was rather like a 2-hour kind of in-depth therapy session come life story. Which I was okay about, because I talk about my story quite publicly. I like to share, because I've had a lot of challenges in my life, and I feel that if I share them, and if people see me and they see that, look, here she is, she's out there doing everything at her age, having had all her challenges, and look at her, then I think, well, I'm going to inspire other people too. And I think I do. So I was really, really grateful for that platform, Pete. And thank you. Yeah.
That's an absolute honor. I sort of say to a lot of people, there's power in a problem, or something we perceive to be a problem in the past. Because we give so much that so much holds us back, and it could be a circumstance or something's happened in our life, or shoulda, coulda, woulda, right? And if you can not just neutralize that part and basically just forgive yourself and understand that was in the past. But then the second bit of that is, if you can actually take that and exactly what you've done, Jane, is learn from it and help to teach others. So that negative experience then becomes a massive positive. So you change the polarity on the experience, and boy, what an energy it gives off, because that's when you see it does become very personal. It becomes very emotional. But if you can own it and you can run with it, then the energy it gives off is far greater, because quite often our biggest failures in life are also our greatest wins as well, and there's a saying I particularly like. It's just, from great overwhelm comes great change. And sometimes, people say, what was your darkest moment in life? And then you ask them, saying, what was the turning point? Well, quite often the two come side by side. So it's a moment of great darkness, but also of great stillness. So if you can guide people through that and then invert the energy, I think it's a very, very special place to be. So
yeah,
it's been amazing.
Yeah. So I often think about that as well, that sometimes our greatest, well, not sometimes, perhaps all the time, our greatest wisdom comes from our pain, and it comes from those lessons. And I personally feel that I am the wisest version of myself that I've ever been, because I have been through a lot in my life, and I've actually learned and benefited from those experiences. And sometimes when we're going through pain, it's hard to actually feel good about it, because pain hurts and it's not nice. If we're having difficult experiences with difficult people and challenges that seem a bit overwhelming, but when we've come out the other side and we look back, then we realize that we've often grown exponentially as a result of that, haven't we, Pete?
Absolutely. I mean, it's the first thing I do say to people, though, is just bearing in mind that you can only experience inside yourself. And so pain, you inflict pain on yourself. It's kind of a bit of a difficult concept to get a hold of, but anytime, if we were to experience something outside of ourselves, it would be called an out-of-body experience, which is quite something else. So bearing in mind, the things that are going on around us just are. They're neither positive nor negative. It's how we perceive them to be. That one person's pain may be another person's pleasure, right? So, it's bearing in mind that something might be happening, and we might say, well, he did that to me, or she did that to me, or whatever happens. Well, they just did. They didn't necessarily do it to you. How you've taken that on is your choice. So you may have taken that on as a very positive thing or a negative, or ideally where you want to be is not in either the past or the future. You want to be as close to the present moment as you possibly can. That's something I've sort of found is, when you're in the past, you're very much living in, doubt and regret and everything else that goes on there. You live in the future, you're all, it's anxiety and fear about what's going to happen. Well, neither you can affect, essentially. So all you can do is live as much as you can in the now. And that's something I found is really sort of quite something that's been, amazing to find out with guests, and to see that moment of clarity, of silence, and really sort of bringing it forward. So it's been beautiful to talk to so many people. It's such a guilty pleasure for me, if you like.
Wow. Yeah, I know that you absolutely love the podcasting, Pete. So let's just go into where the idea of Fire in the Belly came from. So how did it all start?
A little bit of background, I suppose. At 37 and a half years of age, I found myself, the turning point for me was 2 a.m. one morning, sitting pitch black. My first had been born, was teething, so very unsettled in the night. I had a rocking pain in my mouth, and it's quite simply toothache. And just at that point, sometimes when you just, enough is enough, and that was a real breaking point. Fast forward to 9 a.m. the next morning, and I'm on the phone to the dentist, and I'm saying I've got a toothache, and this is 2 days before Christmas. And I'm down there, and she was saying, yep, confirmed, yes, it's toothache, but we can do a temporary fix until basically we get past Christmas and all. And I sat there and said, listen, I can tell you now, one of two things is happening today. Either you're removing this tooth or I am. And it was sort of a gentle laugh, and I was going, I'm actually deadly serious, because it was a turning point in my life. I said, enough is enough. To this day, I am missing my tooth. So, the tooth 15 minutes later was out. But that really, what it signified was just I got to my breaking point. We basically just lost a business. I had a young born child, and anyone was gone, with babies and teething and all the rest. I wasn't sleeping properly. I wasn't looking after myself properly. So that was my low point, and I just couldn't. My formula was wrong, and I say that because I couldn't work any harder.
Yeah.
Physically I was just drained out, but yet here's a family coming along, here's everything else going along, and we're losing a bit, like shifting sands, right?
Oh.
And everything's going on, and I'm just going, I just can't think straight.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really at that point, and yet, I had the privilege of meeting the likes of Grant Cardone, and really having sort of these great conversations with people, and that you're sitting there going, how does this work? I mean, here's different people that they've achieved amazing things, and yet I can't work any harder, right? So I mean, a bit like the title of your show, it's like, I've got to go smarter. I have to go smarter.
Mm-hmm.
And thankfully my formula, and I was broken enough that I said, listen, I've just got to wipe the slate here, and I've got to find out, how do I do this different? I've got to listen instead of talk, and I've really got to just hear what people are saying to me, as opposed to, this is the same thing, I'll just keep banging my head. It's a bit like the front of the first story in the U Squared book. It's brilliant because it talks about the fly just going against the window instead of traveling 2 feet and going straight out the door. It just continues against the window, bang, bang, bang. And that was me. So that moment of silence, that moment of enough was enough, was at 37 and a half years of age, which is 4 years ago now. And really from that, I started scratching my head and saying, why is it that some people have, just there's all this get up and go, some people talk about gut feeling and, what do I really want? I mean, I was the most lost in my life. I was also the most qualified in my life, but because I'm fortunate to have a property portfolio, and, we had just lost a business, but I have a lot of skills and, a lot of things going on. So, and yet people are saying, what do you really want to do? I mean, I lovingly call this moment in my life now my midlife opportunity. Before it was like my midlife crisis at the time, right? But it was the opportunity to just go, do you know what? Just hit the pause button for a second. And anyway, I literally was. I was shortly after that. We had twin girls, and I was sitting, walking the roads with the twin girls, just getting them to sleep, and I'm sitting there going, it's like people talk about their passion and their gut instincts. I'm going, yeah, and people have fire in the belly, and they have, they've got this drive and this, and I'm just going, and this fire in the belly just keeps coming back as a word, and I literally have. 25th of February was the day, and I kind of don't know where it came from as such. It just came in and just kept sticking, and I ended up asking someone, was going, what does fire in the belly mean to you? And they sort of, they talked, and then I decided to sit down with my brother-in-law and saying, talk to me about your fire in your belly, and I kept stum. I just going, talk to me, tell me what's happening. 2.5 hours later, we're dragging ourselves away because kids need picked up and all this is going on. But my brother-in-law was saying, God, it's been amazing to just talk and to talk about my passions. And I think you've really got something here. That's kind of how it happened. And literally fast forward now, we're touching on 400 guests. We've got, there's books going on. There's, TEDx talks. I'm doing a lot of speaking presentations. We're helping other people to write their books. So it's not bad, and I'm dyslexic and ADHD. So this is the irony of a lot of this is that do you know what? Sometimes your weakness is your biggest strength. So it's kind of funny the way it all turns around. So that's a short, long version of how Fire in the Belly came about.
Oh, awesome. That is such a great story. And when I was on your podcast, you asked me what fire in the belly meant to me as well, Pete. And, I just loved the phrase because to me, it's passion. It's a thing that gets you out of bed and gets you going and makes you feel all warm inside. And I think the title is really, really evocative. I love it. I really,
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of have this concept that, I think you could be, you could be the darkest place about to jump off a bridge. You could be at the top of your game and loving and living life. I believe everyone, as long as your heart is beating and there's air in your lungs, I believe you have a fire in the belly. It's almost like it's the term for your soul in many ways. I think as long as you have that, no matter where you're at, then the choice is yours. Now, the question is how big and how bright is your flame?
Yes.
How much are you looking after you? How much are you doing being the best version you can be, right?
Yes.
So, we can all live. And I mean, it's unusual with the show. I mean, and I kind of have a bit of a distinguishing question, which I find, I like to sort of use. And for me, it's very telling. And that simply is, do you like yourself and do you love yourself? And it's amazing the number of people that can't answer that question. And it's a very simple question, right? But you kind of go on, if you're not going to love you, then how's everyone else going to? It's going to struggle a bit, right?
Yeah.
So it's an unusual place to be, if you like. But and I've found, so I get to see a very biased view of life that people come on the show that a lot of people would, the answer would be yes. And so don't get me wrong, we've all got faults and that's fine and things I'd change, right? But I am who I am and that's fine. I'm perfectly imperfect. But
Perfect.
a lot of, with a lot of my clients there, they just can't answer the question. And that can throw some real tailspins, and say, right, well, okay, if I don't love myself, then where am I at? And so it's really interesting. But I love to see people who have passion, but like me now, it's like, my fire in the belly is the fire in the belly process. I love sitting down with people, both publicly and, on the podcast, through the mentoring, etc. And it's just amazing what you find. And the energy it basically irradiates, it's phenomenal, when someone finds their passion, because like me, they don't shut up. They just keep talking because they're so enthusiastic. They don't sit here and go, Jane, what do you think about that? I'm flowing, right? So
yeah. So it's actually living your fire in the belly, if you like. That word that you mentioned, flow. I love that word because I know when I'm in flow, and when I'm in flow, I'm creating. I'm a creator. I love creating stuff. So I love writing, and it's that time when really the world goes away for me, being in flow. So I'd love to ask you, Pete, what being in flow means to you. What does it look like to you?
A couple of different things. I mean, flow, alignment, and learning are probably some of the big things for me. Flow to me is when, and it could be simply, when you're actually getting in and listening to someone, because listening in itself is a bit of a creative art form, weirdly, and the way I would think about it is I kind of hold up a diamond for people. And when you look through a diamond, light refracts as it goes through. So I can never truly say, and I don't think anyone can say, is I know how you feel, right? Because you can't. So what you then have to say is saying, well, okay, can you describe that for me? So almost in my mind, my game is, how can I understand and how can I paint the best picture for this? And let the person describe and really get into their flow. Now, when someone does that, and when someone's talking about their passion, and I've got myself excited about all sorts of crazy stuff simply because the person I'm speaking to gets excited about whatever they're talking about, right? So everything from demolition companies to, you talked about art and creation and, really sort of being in that sort of unbounded, just letting it all flow and ideas and just being in an unreleased state. But then when you're talking about that, your smile's here to, ear to ear, and your energy's up and you're talking faster and there's so much going off. And like a child or anything else, you kind of go, well, if you love it, then I love it, right? So to me, and that's why I call it a guilty pleasure. We get to see so much, we get to hear what other people are doing. So I come away going, God, I'm really excited. It's like, oh, hold on, it's not my project, but I love it still. It's like, I believe me, I've seen some amazing things. And also I'm so fortunate because as an observer, to me, I see it almost like I'm holding up the mirror for them, or I'm holding up the canvas and I'm trying to almost understand and help them as a mentor of mine talked about, is basically finding your masterpiece. And when you help them to do that, now you can never replay it for them, but you know what, when they describe it enough, well, suddenly it becomes quite tangible. Suddenly they can see it and they can feel it, and if you can taste it and you can trigger all the different senses, a bit like when you're describing a goal, you should almost be able to taste your goal. It should be so specific that actually I can close my eyes, I can feel myself, and I can smell what I smell and all that. But basically the mind goes, well, I now can't tell the difference between reality and a future goal, because simply you've triggered me in so many ways. I see it, smell it, if it's a house or it's a car. And a good friend of mine talks about, you should almost go and test drive the car and lick the steering wheel so you know what the car tastes like, right? Maybe in COVID times you might want to just check with the dealer, but you see what I mean is suddenly when your goals and your passions that actually when people say, go, yeah, I'd really like a house. Okay. It's like, what does it look like? Well, I don't know, a house, 3 bedrooms, whatever. But then, he's saying, right, give me the detail. Why does it mean so much? Close your eyes. And bearing in mind, some of us are visual, some of us are kinesthetic, some of us are auditory, so, and you listen for the language, and I can generally tell when they've changed state. So typically we'll have, people refer to themselves, maybe, you might say, well, Jane thinks, or they might say, I think, or we think, or me, or myself. So it's amazing how actually people will change states even in the conversation. So, you might saying, well, Jane, where do you see yourself? So I'm trying to trigger different parts of you. So you're saying, well, yeah, I can't really see that. Okay, so we need to change tack. So saying, if you were to, see your future house, how would that look? And suddenly the you gets it, right? It's kind of hard once you understand these different layers of consciousness. And I talk about this in the book, is 8 levels of consciousness. But when the you then understands and saying, well, I can see it and I can taste it and I can hear birds in the background and I can feel the grass in my feet and the tiles in the hallway and the smelling of the cooking and all this. So just understanding which part of you can really trigger it, and then suddenly all the emotions all just whoosh, and you get this energy release, and suddenly people go, is that a strong goal for you? And they're going, oh yeah, it's done. It's done.
So this is kind of a manifestation, law of attraction, really, isn't it, Pete?
Absolutely, law of attraction. It's really through the book I've tried to use as plain a language, because law of attraction means different things to different people.
Yes.
Energy, vibration, alignment, flow, all these words, and depending on how deep down the rabbit hole you want to go, it's great. And I must say, it's so bizarre for me, Jane. I look back. If I go back 4 years, I wouldn't. Some of my conversations kind of go, "What are you on?" I really don't know. Whereas now, I say to a lot of guests before they come on and say, "Listen, I carry a range of spades. We can go as deep as you want to go. I will let you take it." And I've had the most bizarre midlife crisis, past lives, future lives, spiritual beings. I've gone there. People just don't want to go there. So. And that's fine. We're all different creatures, thank goodness, So it's amazing, but it's law of attraction, it's visualization, it's everything, which, like I say, was previously such a foreign concept to me, but now it's just beautiful to be in this place right now.
Well, we've got quite a few comments, Pete. I won't answer them all, but thank you guys for tuning in. And just wanted to say, yes, we are actually sharing this on my private Facebook group. And Pete, your Fire in the Belly group is private as well, isn't it? So,
yeah.
So you can make any comment that you want. That was a question from one of our listeners tonight. Anyway, cool. So Pete, tell us a bit more about your early life. You mentioned that your both of your parents, sadly passed away. What impact did that have on you? Because you're still pretty young, really, to be without parents and without grandparents for your children.
Yeah, it's my mother passed away when I was 17, and it's at that time it was that sort of transition. She had breast cancer, and unfortunately it was sort of nearly a year from diagnosis to unfortunately death, and it's an unusual time, and there's never a good time or a bad time. Bizarrely now, I consider myself to be extremely fortunate, which is strange. Now, at the time it was very painful, and that sort of triggered really a 7 years of numbness / depression for me. But now, I see myself as fortunate. I wasn't beaten. I didn't. My parents were perfectly loving, very opening, sharing, caring for us. So, ironically, I don't sort of sacrifice the 16 amazing years we have to throw it all away now. But like I say, it's taken a time to get through that, because I'll never forget. And someone said to me in the graveyard when we were burying my mother, and someone said to me there that, listen, it'll take you a year to get over this. It's like, as a 17-year-old, you don't know your elbow from your backside, to be quite honest. Yeah. Emotionally, you're bouncing off the wall somewhere, And a year came and went, and I was kind of going, no, don't feel any different. That's kind of, to me, and that's when sort of a form of depression was seeping in. Now, I see depression very much as a symptom, not a cause. The cause was the actual death, the event. Yes. But the symptom then was the depression, because you can't catch depression. Depression is a state, and it's a paradigm essentially that you're running. But really from that, going through I was just numb. And someone could say to me, right, the dog's died or you've won the lottery, and I would react the same, because that's to me is a very common thing with depression. It's just all inconvenient.
Flatness.
Yeah, and you just flat. Exactly. It's a real. There's no highs, lows, just like whatever. And the problem then is that's when you see people hitting drink or drugs or something else, because they need to. They're trying to get a contrast. They're kind of going, surely everything just doesn't fit in this box, right? I need to feel that. So unfortunately, they go for the artificial stimulants, if you like, because maybe just the place they're in, it's can't really say, well, I can't really, or I don't want to go and do amazing skydiving and really exhilarating things where I would get a natural high. So I go for the artificial high. And that's quite often when one will sort of lead to another for some people, So, so look, but I mean, it did obviously have a significant impact. I then had a basically 10-year corporate career in London, and my father passed away. Similarly, he had esophageal cancer, so it's cancer of the throat essentially. Kind of ironic. Never smoked or anything like that. It was unusual that it was picked up so soon, but again, incredibly unfortunate. But at the same time, again, I mean, we had an amazing upbringing and support and love and care. So I got to say, listen, I'm so fortunate in so many ways.
Yeah, you just have to remember those happy years, right?
Yeah, because you could drown yourself emotionally, physically, and really go crazy if you let it. But you say, right, what am I going to do? It's what's more. Gosh, can you imagine, to lose your life and also somebody else's life simply, that's more tragic in itself, So, but listen, it's a journey for a lot of people. And I even say that in the show. It's like, listen, life is a journey, not a destination. Live in the now. We are where we are, and be grateful for where we are, and listen, it's taken me a long time to get to that point, but now it's, I see it in a pretty different light. So, sad experiences, but also incredibly positive too. I consider myself incredibly fortunate in life.
Yeah. So Pete, let's talk about business and your business interests. And you've got a property portfolio. And what does your business look like at the moment? What kind of shape is it? Should we say?
My generally my portfolio, I started 21 years ago. That's the scary thing now. So it's the couple of things about property is the best thing you can really do is actually take action. And I did that 21 years ago. I was quite a young pup. I'll save everyone the math. I'm 41. I started when I was 20, and listen, there were very different times in the early the early 2000s. So there was self-cert mortgages, the valuations were very different, life was very different. But I kind of saw life as a bit of, property as a bit of a monopoly. Simply in that, it's like you collect the rent, you pay the mortgage, and then anything left is profit. It's as simple as that, right? So that's kind of how it got a wee bit out of hand for a while. And really over the next couple of years, I bought 20 odd properties, and we were flipping them, and I had, it was constantly refurbing and going on. So it was an amazing experience. And thankfully, I had a fairly strong team around me, and I was advised in 2005 to stop buying. The math didn't work. And this is an amazing thing. And I have a very, very simple formula that I run with my property portfolio, and the math stopped working. And saying, if you want to do this, you're going to have to put in more money. The numbers aren't going to be as strong. You're more basically open to risks and liabilities. So more or less, I stopped buying. And 2007, 2008, we know what happened.
Yeah.
And again, I was sort of like a lot of people going, cool, what do I do now? And someone said, listen, all you have to do is collect the rent and pay the mortgage. There's no such thing as negative equity. That only happens when you come to sell. It's a state of mind, right?
Yeah.
So all of this, we're back to mindset. And even at the time, I didn't even recognize it. It was just, so collect the rent, pay the mortgage. And that's what I did for more or less the following, really for the following 10 years. And I just collected the rent. Now, it's amazing what happens with property is you leave it alone for 10 years or 15 years or 20 years. But actually, it does. I mean, I take a compound growth average of about 2%, and that's probably being, that's being pretty sort of understated. That suits me. Well, 2% actually sort of multiplies quite significantly over a 20-year period. So, so I follow a simple strategy. Now and again, I sort of divert to other strategies. Typically, I regret it because my strategy is very boring. And then again, I sort of, ironically, this is also how the podcast came about in terms of I was more dangerous when I was too involved with the property business, because I was trying to tweak it, and I was trying to, it kind of wasn't. Properties are very slow. It's a very, it just takes time.
Yeah.
And if you're like me and you're sort of high energy and a bit attention deficit, and you kind of go, right, we'll do this, and just kind of go, hold on, you just need to let the bread and the dough rise. You need to let it cure. Whereas, if you kind of go, no, I've got to fix it, I've got to change it, I've got to buy more, do more, whatever it is, and it's kind of go, no, the best thing you can leave alone. So that's almost why the podcast came in and going, well, that'll keep me busy.
Yeah.
The formula in the sausage machine, as I call it, is running. So, so that's really been an amazing thing. I am, I'm an engineer by trade. So I had a long corporate career, and really from there, we moved in now. I do a lot of mentoring, I do a lot of coaching, a lot of intuitive work as well. Simply intuitive being that actually I believe the language we use tells us everything we need to know about ourselves. And people actually don't know that they're talking about their goals, they're talking about their limitations, but they don't even recognize the words coming out of their own mouth. So when you sit and you actually listen, well, suddenly you kind of go, oh my goodness, you can't even hear what you're saying, can you? That you said, it could be different parts of me. So you've part compartmentalization, you've got, different wants and needs and all the rest. And for me, it's very simple. It's kind of, you just told me exactly what you want. And you're going, did I? Oh, I didn't realize that. But you start listening, right? So it's that. Listening has been an amazing privilege to come into my life.
Amazing. So, Pete, you were telling us around about the time that your son was born. It was your son, wasn't it? Your firstborn, and then you had
I have 3 daughters.
3 daughters, right? Okay. So the time your daughter was born, you said that you just lost a business. Was that a property business, or was that a different business that you'd had? And
no, it was in. So it was in year 2010. I came back from London, and a good friend of mine had a renewable energy business. And basically, over the following 5 odd years, we took that business and multiplied it by 10. It was pretty amazing. Very different, because I came from a company of 10,000 people, and then moved back to Northern Ireland, and my salary was 1/4 of what it was in London, and all the rest, and there was 10 staff, not 10,000.
Yeah.
So suddenly, I was the finance department, the IT department, and all the rest, but we grew that business exponentially. And then anyone from Northern Ireland will know there was a local scandal, or a local, call it what you want, but there was a government incentive came out for renewable incentives, and the calculation or the incentive was slightly generous, let's just say. And unfortunately, it like they talk about in the Walmart effect or Tescopoly or any of these great books, it accelerated the whole industry. The problem is that it accelerated it at an unsustainable rate.
Right.
They then discovered, obviously, as a lot of these projects started coming online and the incentives actually then had to be paid out, well, then somebody sat down and scratched their head and said, gosh, we've actually overdone this. So they ended up then more or less having the government pulled the plug, shut the scheme down, the whole thing. So our pipeline of business, now, ironically, obviously, the government weren't our direct customers, however, but they were our customer's customer, if that makes sense. So our customer, that was part of the, the incentive for them. That was part of their business plans. But we were wide open, and that's the one thing that, I can point to the day we know when the government announced, and we knew then it was the industry was going to change. Ironically, I wish we had have actually closed the doors shortly after that. What in practice we actually did is we continued to operate for nearly 2 years, hoping, wishing, praying, maybe, that we could actually recover it. And to be honest, all we did was actually burn through reserve cash. And to that point. But again, we felt obligations for our customers. We felt obligations to ensure warranties, ensure guarantees, etc., etc. So hand on heart, I can say, emotionally, I have no regret from that. However, financially, it was a big tell, and I, like anything, I would do things very differently again. But it also taught me a lot of things, in so many ways. So yeah, so ultimately, it's every problem in the business is a leadership problem, I believe. It doesn't matter what way you look at it; it always comes back to the person making the decision or the leaders. So yeah, I would do things differently, but it also was, basically it took down the government for a while, so it was a pretty big scandal in Northern Ireland. So we were one of the good guys. We were building a long-term business, but when the broad brush comes and takes out the industry, we were wide open. Listen, do things happen for a reason? It gave me a very good chance to stand off the treadmill for a while and have my dark moments and toothaches and kids and all the rest. But for now, I'm actually very grateful for all the opportunity and everything that was going on, really.
Yeah. And, it's business failure is like a badge of honor, really, for entrepreneurs, because most of them, well, in fact, all of the most successful entrepreneurs that I have known have failed multiple times, and they freely admit it. In fact, I remember when I met Alfie Best. So he is on the Sunday Times rich list, worth something like 700 million. And he did a presentation when I was at a training day at Progressive, actually. And he said that he had a horrible failure when he was really relatively young. And he said that one failure was the thing that had taught him everything that he knew today. I mean, obviously, there was a compound effect of the other, there's the business throughout his life. But the lessons that he'd learned from that really early, they set the foundation for his success going forward. And this is a story that I hear again and again and again. There is really no shame in business failure. There might be some temporary pain, but if we use the lessons that we've learned and get wiser as a result, then, our wealth and our success will multiply going forward for sure.
Absolutely. And it's funny, like all things in life, is quite often the point of greatest contrast is the point of greatest learning, and that dark hour, that pain point with the business, that point when you actually realize you've gone too far or the position is not recoverable. It's really painful at that time, but also when. It's not if, it's when you bounce, and whenever you come out and whenever you decide, and it may well be that you were on the right path, but just slightly off track. And that's, but you know what, you come back with such a thirst and a hunger, and you become so much wiser in saying, I will never let that happen again. And this is where, ironically, sometimes failure should be celebrated, not, we have an amazing setup in sort of the UK, if you like, in terms of the limited company status. It allows entrepreneurs to flourish. It allows them limited liability. That actually you can fail, and please, you don't aim to, but sometimes things are amazingly, innovative and whatever, and sometimes it could be for any multiple reasons, and innocent and guilty and otherwise. But we have this amazing opportunity for this to happen, and so why not sort of cherish that, and why not sort of see what's possible? Because, gosh, there's nothing worse, and that's why one of the things we put on the front of the book, and there's been debated heavily whether it was the right thing to put on the front of the book and saying be heard or die. How many people saying is every time that oh gosh, I wish I had done that, and a little piece of you just dies. It's like it's a little regret that steps in, and it's like, oh gosh, there's another missed opportunity. Oh yeah. And you can feel the disappointment just draining this, because you either didn't speak up, because you didn't try, because you didn't do it. Well, then just another little piece of you fades away and the light goes out, and you just kind of go, God, what's more tragic? To sort of, it's the usual thing. What would you do? Would you rather to love and to lose, or to not love at all? It's amazing in saying, well, and some of the guests I found astounding in that, one guest in particular, and she was abused at 7 years of age, and it took her till 47 years of age to actually start dealing with it. And she's been on this 5-year journey. And the question I posed to her and saying, what would you change with your life? What do you regret? And she said, of course, I wish the incident hadn't happened, but apart from that, I wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah.
And I thought, God, the insight into that, it just blew my mind, because she was saying, I've had, that experience and 40 years of preparation to fail. She says, you wouldn't believe how strong my faith is now, how strong my belief, my spirituality, everything. And the woman was just glowing. And I ended up doing multiple interviews with her, because I was blown away by her clarity and all that. But you sort of go, and in those 40 years, there was drink, there was depression, there was all sorts. But to come to the end of that and say, listen, I don't regret it, because the moment of clarity that I have now it's worth everything that I went through to have that moment of clarity. And it's just, to me, I kind of, it's almost like the atom bomb effect. You know, an atom bomb is only about 8 meters long, but yet the disaster radius is huge. Well, it's a bit like the clarity of an idea or your genius. It is the North Star. It's the golden thread, if you like, that actually in the whole, you know, the golden thread in the desert. It's just when you find it, it's worth everything. It is truly worth everything. And then it just irradiates that energy. So I don't know, I've gone off on one slightly, but hopefully that makes a little bit of sense about the passion and what we do.
Yeah. So, Pete, one question that I wanted to ask you is, why do you think a lot of people never find their fire in the belly? As you said, they never really fulfill their potential, or they never really perhaps dare to dream. Why is that, do you think?
It's a number of things. It can be failure. It can be, you know, and what's almost more deadly than failure is actually someone saying it's okay or it's good. You know, and it's we actually have, you know, a section of society that it's more scary because they're kind of going, "How's your job? Yeah, it's good. How's your salary? Yeah, it's good.
How are you? I'm fine."
And you sit there and go, yeah, and it's kind of going, oh, this is 50 Shades of Beige. Wow, this is exciting. You know, and, you know, but yet when somebody is entrepreneurial or whoever it is, or listen, I don't care, you can be, I mean, there's one person I spoke to and their passion was about tea cozies, right? And you kind of go, tea cozies, that's a very unusual thing. And yeah, so it's like, but knitting. But when you think about it, it's an amazing thing, right? Because you could be very easily the #1 tea cozy knitter in the world, you know, because you can have tea cozy forums, you can have knitting forums, you can have, you know, it's amazing pastime. There's so much, and you know, but the point being is that actually is, you know, is daring to dream. You know, you put that very well in saying that, you know, when are you going to get to the stage that enough is enough? Because this is what's so deadly about the drug of being good or okay, is that it's not bad enough to do something about it, and it's not good enough to, you know, sort of be okay with it. You know, so people sort of go, you know, did you have a good life? Yeah, it was all right. Yeah, it was fine. I can't. You know, it's like, are you capable of more? Oh yeah. You know, would you like to do more? Yeah. Well, talk to me about your bucket list or your love list, as I like to call it. And they'll ream off all these 50 things. Like, are you ever going to do it? No, I couldn't do that. I don't love myself. I don't, you know. And it's just I sitting there and going, oh, Jeannie Mac, right, okay, where do I go with this? You know, so why are people like that? Is like, well, they, you know, there's so much noise. There's so much noise out there that actually we don't even hear ourselves.
Yeah, good point.
It's taking that time out for you, you know, and you got to be unreasonable, and you got to say to people, no, this is who I am. This is what I want. You know, because we spend a lifetime of being reasonable. You know, it's like, oh, Jane, be reasonable now. You know, it's like, help me out here, or do this, or do that, or see my point of view. And eventually you go, listen. That's what I love, almost this midlife opportunity. It's saying, well, to hell with everything. I don't care what my primary school teacher said. I don't care what exam result I got back when I was, you know, knee-high to a grasshopper. I don't care what my first boss said. Do you know what I mean? Eventually you do get to a point in life, and almost that breaking point, saying enough is enough. And it's just like going, listen, I'm done. I'm done taking everyone else's opinions. I don't really care. I'm going to the shop in my slippers. I really doesn't matter what everyone thinks. And, you know, I just come down to saying, right, well, it's down to me. You know, if it's meant to be, it's down to me. It's as simple as that, you know, and saying enough of the excuses, you know, find your passion. You know, that's how I did, saying, but be the best. And the first thing I would say to anyone is learn how you learn. It sounds really strange, but I mean, through this process, I discovered I'm dyslexic and ADHD.
Oh.
And, you know, and it was really quite ironic coming from an author, right? But actually, when you start to learn how you learn, well, then suddenly, because 5 years ago, I read one book in 5 years. And then when I found Audible, now high-speed Audible, so I'll listen to everything at a higher speed. And, you know, but I went through 70 books in the first year.
Oh, wow.
And you're kind of going, so you go from, but it's a case of going, a bit like when I'm saying you're trying to understand your goal or your vision. Well, sometimes you just need to make sure it's actually tuned in the right language for you. So somebody speaking to me at a slightly higher speed, It
Yeah.
actually almost goes straight into my brain. Too slow and I get bored, too fast and I switch off. So
Oh,
having the information streaming at me at that, now I listen to a book every night, earphones on, go to sleep, and I wake up and the book's finished. And listen, subconsciously, I'm sucking it in. I believe we literally are, you know, about 2% of my skill is here talking to you. 98% of it is basically keeping me alive, monitoring the environment, dreaming, thinking, doing, ideas, memories, everything else that's going on. So, people sort of think, I'm really conscious in my life. It's like going, you have no idea. You have no idea how capable you are, how much potential you have. And that's the one thing is if you could even feed people that just the tiniest drop of what's possible, that would be enough to blow your mind and go on everything I thought, this echo chamber that I live in, and I thought, well, I can't do that, or I'm no good at this, or I'm no good at that. All that is just blown out of the water. It's a complete reset,
amazing.
Yeah, as you can tell, I get quite passionate about it.
Oh yeah, but I love the way that you describe that, because you're really just saying don't accept your limitations. Find out we all have limitations, and as you said, you found out that you had dyslexia and ADD and so on. But everybody can work with their limitations as long as they understand them, can't they? And it's not an excuse for just hanging back and not being the very best version of yourself. Nothing is an excuse, really. We all have a duty, right, and responsibility to ignite the fire in the belly, if you like, and to be that very best version of ourselves. And we just need to go out there and grab life with both hands, don't we, Pete?
Absolutely. You know what? I mean, it's your life. How long are you willing to sit back and just watch it drift by, or someone else to decide it for you? Like, I mean, listen, this is no rehearsal, and eventually you go, well, okay, you mightn't be the best reader in the world, but find a way. Because even a lot of people will struggle. I mean, even with the dyslexia and ADHD labels, and I find that myself. I mean, once I got the label, it sort of freed me, and now actually I find I can read better than I ever read. It's like, that's irony, isn't it? So, but listen, the past is just that, and you can change your past, right? Because you can change your perception. People sort of say, well, that was a bad event in my life, and it's going, well, maybe sometimes that bad thing or that good thing didn't happen, so the great things can happen in future. So it's just really getting your head around that and just changing perspective and saying, well, what's possible? So, and I love that. I mean, that's saying, what if? 37 and a half years of age typically was the midpoint in my life, give or take statistically. And I'm going, would I be happy to rerun the first 37 and a half years and run them again in the same, and yes, be slightly more successful and do all that, but would that be good enough? And I'm kind of going, do you know what? Even if I said yes, if I did 1% change every day, which is 14.4 minutes, if I change one thing 1% a day, that's like 38 times of it, 3,800% change every year by taking 14.4 minutes a day. What if you just did that? What if you took 14.4 minutes to do yoga, to read a book, to reach out to somebody new, to try something different, to write a book, do whatever you want to do? What if you tried?
I love that. This conversation has been so inspirational. I think just what was needed for a dark late January. I think we're still in January, aren't we? January in the middle of lockdown. So thank you so much, Pete, for joining us tonight. It really has been such a pleasure. And I just before we go, I just wanted to say thank you to some of the people that have been tuning in live. So Sharon, Ollie, Lucky, Dan, Lorraine, Abdul, Heather, thank you so much, and anonymous Facebook user. So thank you so much, who didn't register. Thank you so much for being here. And also, before we go, Pete, if anybody wants to contact you, what's the best way for them to get hold of you?
Sure. If they just go to my website, mightypete.com, it's all there. And also we have all the usual Facebook pages and everything else. So you're more than welcome to come and have a chat, let's say. I like to ask a lot of questions. So only you can see you, the true you. So that's what it's all about. So everything after that is your choice.
Amazing. Well, thank you again, Pete, for joining us, and thank you for everybody that tuned in tonight, and I'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Super. Jane, thank you.
Bye for now.